Episode 130 of the Bluest Tape. I'm Harvey Couch alongside my good friend and co-host Jeff Colath. How you doing, buddy?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm really excited about our show tonight. We have a titan in the scene of knowledge and
A real life academic, like a PhD even.
yeah, I mean, I'm basically gonna just let you guys talk because you're
Yeah.
way more, intelligent and informed than I am, and I'm just gonna occasionally put in one-liners
hmm
about Goose, and that's Hey,
Please do.
they were up in the Cheese Land this
I
weekend.
know, and they're only a four-member band now, apparently.
They are, yeah. They filled up the 4,500 seat High Life Theater for 3 nights.
I did. I watched. Well, you listened to the shows, I'm sure, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What did you think of their version of Love Light?
They played that in Cincinnati when we were there. It was an
Okay.
encore. I mean, it was fun. They don't really. It's not like a jam vehicle for them. It's more of just like a hey, let's have fun playing Love Light.
Yeah.
It was fun. What do you have thoughts?
I agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, from what I saw, those shows were good. And there's a band called Widespread Panic that has three shows, I think, this
Ooh,
weekend.
see, now that's going to be exciting in the AC.
In the AC, the Maui Invitational for Widespread Panic.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, the opening call is obvious. Do you think it's
Mm.
obvious?
Um,
Or is it so obvious that it's too obvious for them to do it?
is it impossible? What?
No,
What?
I mean,
Gotta get back to the
it's gonna
house?
open. You
No.
just have to open with disco, right?
Disco. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. I mean, that's how they
yeah,
should do it.
yeah.
Hey, should we bring Bob on?
Oh wait, do we have anything else Widespread Panic to discuss in the
Um,
present tense?
Present tense. No, I'm excited to see what I want to see them coming back. They announced some shows. Where they did another 3 night run that they
Chicago.
announced in Chicago. Yeah, still waiting on the Red Rocks dates. They're still open that last weekend in June. I assume that's going to come. The weekend is open at Red Rocks, but they have not announced it yet. So.
There was a lot of Billy Strings Widespread Panic conversation on the socials.
Mm,
And I guess because Billy had shows at the United Center
okay.
and Panic is we're at the Chicago Theater, I
Right.
suppose.
Yeah.
And so, Billy Strings
Man, arena
selling out
rocker.
basketball arenas.
It's crazy. Who'd have thought it?
Oh,
Do you remember
okay.
talking about him on this very podcast? And you're like, "That's a weird name, Billy Strings." He's he's
It's got to be a gimmick, right?
right. You're like this guy.
Uh-huh.
He's not gonna. Nothing's gonna come of this
Not going to
guy.
amount to much.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't say he wouldn't amount to much. I just said that I thought his name was dumb, which
Yeah.
is kind of still is. It still is. But
Yeah.
Billy won. Billy's
Yeah.
not. He is winning
Right.
in every sense of the word. So
Yeah.
good for him.
Um,
Okay.
okay. Well, let's bring on our very special guest. We've talked about having this gentleman on the show for a while, and now we're finally lucky enough to do it live from outside Music City, right? And that you're still down there by Nashville, right? Bob
Yeah,
Beatty
just
joining the Bluest Tape. Bob, how you doing, buddy?
good to see you, man. Good to see you, Jeff. You gonna correct him or should I?
Oh,
It's
what did I
not
do?
Beatty,
Beatty.
actually.
Oh my gosh, what a jerk I am. I've been doing that for like 4 years.
Yeah, man. It happens. It's okay. It's
I will
okay.
say
But
this. Give me credit on this, Bob. When the AI bots were summarizing last week's episode where we talked about you coming on, they misspelled your name and I corrected it. They had it with an IE, and I was like, no,
Ah,
that's not it. It's Y. So I know how to spell your name. I just don't know how to pronounce it.
right out.
is
Right out.
is
It
IE
happens all the
typically
time.
pronounced Beatty?
Look, here's the deal. Here's a funny one. In my hometown, there was a Dr. Beatty who was a dentist, and then my father was Pat Beatty, who was an attorney. And at one point, they knew each other somehow, and Beatty would complain that his name was always mispronounced Beatty, and my dad said the same thing. It was like this was an issue with my grandfather, who I never knew, a big issue with him. And I am really careful with names, like I genuinely, because it was a bit. Here's the funniest one though. My dad, rest in peace. I just realized he was the worst with people's names. Nobody fucked up a name like Pat Beatty, who was pissed off anytime you called him Beatty. He would stop conversations. So anyway, now here's the deal. Now, honestly, like I'm an author, I have, qualifications here. It's important that it's right to me, even more so.
100%.
Differently, important instead of just being indignant. The best was when substitutes would fuck it up. Boy, I would. In high school, I could be such a jerk about that. Anyway, so thank you for that entry, Harvey. Can I say this on the Billy Strings thing? Genuinely, exact same thing. I remember you guys talking about him. Harvey, you were like, wow, this, and this. And I remember talking to Jeff. I go, I don't know, man. His name just really, something about that name.
Seems kind of corny. Seems like a corny jam band guy.
I've never lost that. And it's terrible. I know it's sort of like Talking Heads. I know it's me, not them. It's my fault, not his fault, or keyboard players who play standing up like all the 80s people. Anyway, it's good to see you gentlemen finally. And we need to state for the record, this was supposed to happen before the pandemic. Of course, we just hit pause. As we just talked about, for 4 years, I guess. And we are back to where we were about the time Jeff and I were fixing to talk. I think we had just seen...
When did we gathered at the Southern Grist Brewery in
that was like in
in East Nashville?
18.
Nashville. Okay. We met outside Cincinnati too, right?
That as well. Yes, that was later, but I think that was yeah. But either way,
that was the summer of 19. That was July of 19.
My memories of years ends like around 2000. Anything up to 2000, like World Series, Super Bowls, Panic dates. Yes. I got all that. After 2000, it's just a blur, basically.
I definitely 100% can relate to that one. 100%. I have to, I do a lot of it just when I put up social media, and I have to double check a lot. I'm amazed at how much I do intuitively remember, but I'm afraid to put out there, because I got to check it. But I'm with you exactly, totally.
So I want to get into your expertise of the Allman Brothers and Duane Allman and your book and all of that. But it is a widespread, but tangentially a Widespread Panic podcast, and you are a fan of said band, and so let's just do a little bit of that maybe, and then we can dig into your professional life.
Yeah, like we'll just talk straight Panic. This was a band that came out, when the jam band scene happened. I was in college, and they played, bands like them played in all around Florida and the Southeast. It was very easy to see them, and they were like widespread, which is what I called them at the time, and for many years it was an endless sort of fascination, and I had to tap into the taping community there so I could get good tapes, fresh tapes, from a purely them perspective, they were like my band for a very long time, like the one band that I was able to very much access and see, saw I don't know, dozen times or so, maybe a little more, in the right before I had kids. When I had children, that was kind of when I stepped off, and then Mikey died, and it was kind of like, okay, I'm I stayed tapped in when I could, but I just want to say very quickly, I'm waiting for somebody to write the book on old school Widespread Panic, like the founding band and what they were, because honestly, they were groundbreaking. And I was stunned myself when I really started getting back into guitar again, maybe decade or so ago, a little bit longer, but like I kind of got the bug again, and how much Mike Hauser and the way that he played influenced how I approached guitar. That honest tune with the lingering lead, I've never been able to capture that lingering lead, that sound that he could do, but it's one of my favorite in all of music. And so they're really important. I think they're really, really, really important and vital and deserving of some very serious discussions in the way we discuss REM or we discuss the
Right,
drive-by
from an
truckers
academic
or,
standpoint.
or the
Right. I mean,
Allman
I think
Brothers.
what is so interesting is all the different sort of the Venn diagram, right? I mean, the Athens scene, the Southern music Capricorn record scene, the the larger jam band scene,
Johnny
the
Sandlin
business,
produced my
right?
favorite record of theirs
I
every
mean,
day.
Billy
Like,
Bob Thornton, Vic Chestnut, all of, and then the business model, that they sort of made a decision to kind of stick with their whole careers. I think it's super interesting and
Bruce Hampton.
and one of one, right? Yeah.
Yeah. You said it. One of one is actually, that's a brilliant way, and a brilliant way to put it. And so that, listen, I've seen the reason I have tinnitus. The reason the day tinnitus hit me and never went away was the day after seeing Widespread Panic play 3+ hours at Rollins College. After 2 hours of jamming with my friends in a bedroom in our garage band, and then we went out to a club the next night, and my ear, I only hear in one ear, never stopped ringing the next day. And Widespread Panic is a very big part of that. And that was 1993. I'm not saying yay, like go tinnitus, not at all. I'm saying though, like it was, some of the things that I experienced with that band, or and being a part of a fan community, like the Dead were, for me, a little bit untouchable for me. They were still, like, when I saw them a couple times, and they were still touring, but I wasn't ever going to be one of those people.
Yeah.
But I did feel very much a part of something kind of special. They nurtured it. And then when people started throwing lighters at the band and people with glow sticks in the audience started dancing and wanting to be seen, I said, push away from that.
I think Jeff's moment was when they started cheering the line in Traveling Light about, ecstasy. I think that was his moment. But everybody's got their own moment, and it's fine. But there's something about, and we've talked about this with regards to Billy Strings and with regards to Goose, about seeing a band in its ascendancy, and it's kind of yours, right? And that's why it becomes something, more personal than seeing the Dead with 50,000 people in 1994 or whatever. You know what I mean? So
you literally captured it. I mean, that was me with Dave Matthews Band. It was me with Derek Trucks, to this day.
Sure.
I have stood 4 feet from Derek's amplifier, more times than I remember. We don't remember dates. So but anyway, I thought when you guys were doing this, when you were talking about shows, and Jeff and I, we go way back in the history museum world, and the way he tells stories and I tell stories are very similar. We like the same sort of things. We understand what makes a good story in these things beyond just because we're such hyper nerds about this too. Listening to you guys talk music inspired how I approached my book in general, just like my friendship and colleagueship with Jeff inspired that too. And having to think about Widespread Panic as a piece of that puzzle was important to me because it was a part of me. Like you said, Harvey. So that there's in a nutshell. I love that band. Every day it was a desert island is for me for a number of years, and Pilgrims is still on that. I probably have a top maybe 100, maybe 250 songs I will never fast forward ever in my life. I don't know how big that list is, but Pilgrims is on it, no doubt.
Okay.
So there's probably a dozen Allman Brothers songs on it, but that's all ranking. But Pilgrims is that precious to me as a song, and they have more than that. It's just that's the one that really hits me. So,
hey Jeffrey, can we interrupt your cataloging, or is it?
No,
okay.
I'm taking notes.
You let us know when you're ready to jump in.
Well, what I wanted to, you guys are doing such a good job. I think, Bob should show a copy of his book and tell us the title of the book and what it's about. Good.
So look at that. That's professional right there.
There you go.
Play All Night.
So Bob, tell us about Play All Night.
Play All Night, Duane Allman and the Journey to Fillmore East. Hey, can I do my recommendation, or does that come later?
Later.
Okay. I'm gonna put it aside. I was like staring at it, preparing for that question. So now Jeff throws it over to me for my thesis here. So the bottom line is this: Play All Night is really my argument is why At Fillmore East is such a significant record to Duane Allman and to the Allman Brothers legacy, and that it's much deeper than just their best-selling record, the one that, you know, put them over the top, but the stakes that were on the line when they recorded that record. They were going to break the band up after two very unsuccessful records, and hundreds of thousands of dollars dumped into the band. You know, the fact that they recorded live in front of, you know, I say this all the time, but it's the biggest stage in rock at Fillmore East. Everybody knew it. Bill Graham knew it, and they delivered. This is a record that has 0 overdubs. And I read today that today's like the 47th anniversary of Waiting for Columbus, or we are nearing. It might have been this week or last week. I just saw it on social media, but you know, that record was heavily overdubbed, as great as it is, right? You know,
yeah, Europe
so
72 was a great studio record.
Yeah. So was Skullfuck. You know,
Yeah.
it's which is bizarre, right, when you think about it. But that is not the case on Fillmore East. And one of the things that I say is, you know, it's just like Coltrane walking into Rudy Van Gelder's studio and recording A Love Supreme, you know, except you had an audience there too. You know, and I mean, in no way am I saying their achievement is bigger than John Coltrane's. No way am I saying that. What I'm saying though is I think a lot of times that record people think about, oh, it's a great live album. Like Get Your Yayas Out is a live album. It's a great album that was recorded live and released as an artistic statement that was very important to the band. And so that's essentially the argument of the book, is deconstructing that album and the sound that made. I call it the biography of a sound.
Okay. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me ask you this. Could that record have been released as a studio record, or could it only have been, you know, I mean, could they have gotten away with, I don't remember the timings on some of those tracks, but they were lengthy, right? And could they have gotten away with releasing a double record like that with those length of songs as a studio record?
No. Maybe, you know, certainly not at that time in their career. The thing that is, you know, super evident that, you know, came out. So I had to get this motif. Jeff knows. I don't remember, Jeff, if you read my whole dissertation, but I know. I mean, Jeff went through this process with me when I got my PhD, because his insights were important. But you know, the issue was my dissertation was just a whole bunch of information, all the stuff I could do. And it took me time to like say, what am I actually like really trying to say here about anything? And it's like Duane was important as an artist. This record is his, you know, masterpiece. And here's why. And then I think the side argument, I'll get to your point in a sec, Harvey. I'm processing it as I'm babbling, but the side, you know, sort of argument is, you know, that's the wrong way. Saying side argument, I'm losing my train of thought when I think about this. But why is this record, you know, so important to Duane? Oh, the other is honestly his legacy, and I really felt this as I wrote the book. And this is where my whole concept of Long Live the ABB comes from, which is like my Substack, newsletter, blog, my, you know, all my social media is, you know, Duane didn't die. The band didn't die when Duane Allman died. Mm-hmm. The band continued on, and it's new and it's different. And, you know, Panic's a similar way. Government Mule, Dave Schools stepped in, you know, and into that situation with them. You know, like it's I think it's something that all of these bands learned from them, is like that perseverance piece. And for me, like that legacy that Duane has is so much bigger than his records. You know, it's this band that just lived on, and that honestly through listening to it has brought me like this wellspring of interest in music. Like it's just been fun, you know? So that's the other piece to it. Back to your question, Harvey. No, I mean, they said clearly Dickie Betts hated the studio. Like called it a prostitution of music. Like it wasn't just, I mean, you know, Dickie's was an irascible character, but he was a very thoughtful guy when he was, and I grabbed as many of that as I could to throw in the book, because he really is thoughtful, even though he's got this reputation as being this hard swinging, you know, rednecky drunk. And I think everybody would admit it's kind of a well-deserved reputation, but you know, but he was a very thoughtful, introspective guy. And when you could pull it out of him, it was, you know, you'd put it in there. I put it in there, at least. That was my goal. So he didn't like that, man. You know, like the song Dreams, the studio cut from the first album. That's all Duane on guitar. There is Dickie left the studio because he hated it. So no, I don't think so. It's not as much Harvey the length, I think, as it is the dynamics of the push-pull being in front of a band. And again, any of these bands that we're talking about that you guys listen to, that we've listened to, we've all been there when the band pulls us up into a big wave and then crashes it back. I mean, that's what we love about it. Classical music does it, you know, jazz does it, you know, these dynamics and these big swings, like the big music, and it's psychedelic as shit. I think that's another thing that I really want. I remember I asked Jeff about it. I go, whatever happened to the term acid rock, right? I mean, acid rock was just psychedelic rock, right? I would argue Lights for Panic was psychedelic as shit back in the day. And maybe it's because of the amount of mushrooms I used to eat and go to their concerts, but they were awesome that way, you know? And I think, you know, the Allman Brothers similarly. So no, Harvey, long answer to your question. I'm sure rehearsals were pretty fucking awesome, right? Yeah. They needed that audience. They needed to feel that juice, you know?
So what was the process from a business standpoint that they made the plans to record that specific show? You know, what was the lead up to that? You know, you said that they were on the verge of being done. You know, talk a little bit about that.
So they'd released 2 records in 2 years, and Duane had just appeared on Layla with Eric Clapton. And the second record, Idlewild South, is a very good record. I always wonder why it did well. I mean, it hit number 38. It didn't stay on the charts for very long, and no singles were released. That had Midnight Rider, man. Why they didn't release that as a single blows my mind. Really, it does. But so it was basically Duane and the band and their management, Phil Walden, just came to the conclusion that, you know, in order to do what we're trying to do here, to capture the energy that we need to play and to sound our best, we want to record live. There was some discussion about where they would do that, and they had been recording shows throughout the summer of 1970. Love Valley Festival, Atlanta Pop Festival got recorded. Well, Love Valley, a crappy version ended up, but they were trying to record stuff. They talked about recording at the Warehouse in New Orleans, New Year's Eve, 1970. Duane actually says, like, Tom Dowd couldn't get here, so that's why we're not doing it, which is weird because 3 months later, they schedule 5 shows at Fillmore East, and Tom Dowd doesn't even know they're there. It's the most bizarre thing to me. Like, they didn't record in New Orleans because he wasn't there, but then they didn't tell him they were recording at Fillmore East. So they recorded 5 shows, Harvey. The first one, I'm sorry, they recorded 4 shows. They played 5. Thursday night, they added a Thursday night show as a rehearsal. Then Friday, the Allman Brothers, it went Elvin Bishop Group, the Allman Brothers, and Johnny Winter, the Friday early show. Johnny Winter watched from the side stage that early show, and according to everybody in around, Alan Arkush from Fillmore East staff said they tore into that Friday early show like it was the Saturday late show. And Johnny Winter after that said, we're switching orders. Right. You know, from now on, Johnny Winter's going to be opening for the Allman Brothers Band. And so they recorded 4 shows, for 2 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. The Saturday night show, late show, is where, like, that's where Whipping Post, Mountain Jam comes from. Stormy Monday comes from that. Liz Reed comes from the early show. I think Statesboro comes from, but it's all mostly that Saturday when they were the last band to play. And you know, they recorded and went. In fact, 2 weeks later, less than a week later, about 10 days later, they got arrested outside of Jackson, Alabama, for an absolute pharmacopoeia, and were jailed for a time there. You know, like, they went right back on the road after they recorded it. Released it in July 1971. By October, it had gone gold, sold 500,000, which was maybe 3-4 times what they had sold thus far with all of their other albums. And Duane was dead about, I don't know, a day or so later after they realized it went gold. So but it was their reputation, you know, like management, it was really Jerry Wexler. I guess Jeff and I could tell tales about Jerry Wexler. Jeff probably has. Wexler had a lot invested in it with Phil Walden and didn't think that the band was going to break through. He argued about releasing the record as a double album. He argued about releasing it as a double album for a single album price. That kind of makes a little sense when you're trying to recoup your investment. But, it ended up being, a massive hit, saved Capricorn Records, saved the band, at least in terms of as a touring entity. They ended up, money started pouring in at that point.
Do you think that there was the general public was in a different state in summer, fall of 71 than they were in 70 when their studio records were released? Were they more receptive to this kind of music, or is it just that it was that much better, or that much more special than the first two?
I'm going to have to go with the latter. Jeff may differ with me on that, but I mean, if you think about the bands, like, Crossroads, that was 68, Soul Sacrifice on Woodstock, and the Woodstock was popular. The Dead that were never big, commercially, but they played a lot of stuff, No, I think it was really, who knows why Idle Wild South didn't really break big, but the fact that Fillmore East did is just because it captured and here's the other argument for the book, actually, I should say. I'll wrap it up with that. How do we know what the Allman Brothers said, what the Allman Brothers wanted to accomplish in music? How do we know what they wanted to accomplish in music, and how do we know if they did? And we know what they wanted to accomplish in music because they said as much. Duane in particular, virtuosos, he wanted people who were as good as he were. They wanted to be in the live experience, all of these things. They wanted to create music in the moment. How do we know if they hit the mark or not? I don't even know if they hit the note, pun intended, is that's what the audience said about Fillmore East. And they didn't say it as much about the other two records. Some did, like Lester Bangs loved the first record, loved it. A lot of people loved Idle Wild South because it was a new sound for them. But when Fillmore East hit, the reviews were all in a certain way,
Jeff,
I have questions.
Please.
I disagree with everything you just said, Bob. No.
Point of order, sir.
Point of order. So one of the, well, I guess I'll just start with this, because really what your book is in a lot of ways the first sort of academic approach to the Allman Brothers and their music. I know that Duane's at the center of your story, but the books that have preceded it, Scott Friedman's book, obviously in the mid 90s, which was heavily influential to me, certainly. Alan Paul's first book, which was, just sort of a cut and paste collection of interviews. Alan's second book is much more and better researched and better written. But yours is really the first one that goes and seeks out sources that, frankly, even as much of a nerd of this stuff as you are, that was one of the exciting things for me, was to see these interviews and to see these reviews and things, particularly from college newspapers, college audiences, and that type of thing. So talk about that process just a little bit, but then also sort of what was the most surprising quote or source or story that you uncovered? Or, surprising, it can be surprising and useful, it could be superfluous, or it can just be hilarious.
Okay. Let me, there's a lot in this thing. It's packed with stuff and packed with sources. And it is well beyond some of the basic ones that are out there. But there were three books, Jeff said. There's a third one, Jeff, that came out in 1975 or 76, the Allman Brothers Band biography and words and pictures. Another journalist, Tom Nolan, which is honestly, I'm serializing it on Long Live the ABB. It's so packed with good stuff. Some of the early lore and where it sort of comes from. You start to look at, like, okay, where do these ideas and these band mythos, where does all this myth come from, or where do these stories, what are the origin stories, etc. And digging in to unpack that, I didn't know what I was searching for when I was doing the research ever. I'll be honest, like I just began collecting a ton of articles, anything I could find. And then I found the treasure trove. And this is important at a moment like this, I must say. I found a treasure trove of National Endowment for the Humanities supported projects to digitize college newspapers of the era. And listen to me, if you want to talk, if anybody values this book right here or anything within it, it is literally because of that investment, because I was able to find a whole bunch of things that had not made it out of that, vast archives.
And it like existed in a library somewhere, right? In just one place in paper, right?
And it's hard, doing research with primary sources is really, really hard. It's difficult, okay? And I'm doing it as a part-time, full-time employee, part-time student, et cetera. Dad and everything else.
Full-time dad.
I got to do it. Really from my. Sometimes, man, my wife would be sleeping, and I'd just be on the iPad saving sources that I was finding through this. And it was, University of North Carolina, Clemson. Friggin' high school. I found some reviews in high school newspapers. Like just it was a wealth of information, and as you said, Jeff, like the thing that I learned when I did the PhD research was sort of like, what am I going to do and or say that's different? We have 3 biographies on the Allman Brothers. We have a biography on Duane Allman. We have actually 2 if you count Galadriel's book, which is something super special. But I'm not going to retell that story any better than anybody else did. So what can I say different? Well, one I can do, and I have a lot of experience with, is the fan voice and what fans say. And, from an academic perspective, it's, like reception theory. What is the reception? And that's what I got a chance to look at. What, not just, John Landau or Lester Bangs, or what does, Joe Silver and, Susie O'Connor say. And I found all that, and that is, really that process was probably the greatest one. Now the 2 findings, I'll start with the one, Jeff, that I think you've given me some love for before, and I appreciate it a lot, is the People's Band. This is a concept that I really never saw said a lot of, but it was always there. This concept of the Allman Brothers Band as the People's Band. And I researched it. There was no marketing memo that went out and said, call them this. It was just kind of what it was and how they referred to it. I always thought that was super cool, and indeed true. Honestly, Barry Oakley's kind of vision for the band was that. He had that same vision for the band. They weren't saying, oh, let's be like the Grateful Dead, but it's that similar thing, what the Dead were to the West Coast audience and to their people in San Francisco and Northern California. This is what the Allman Brothers Band were to the South, And the other one is my favorite.
Oh, go ahead. I have a follow-up to that.
You want to go with that one before I do my favorite?
No, you tell me what your other thing was, and then I'll follow.
My favorite quote in the entire book, I think, or one of them. And this was my finding on this random piece of it was like a photocopy something in the archives at the Big House, not in the Big House in Macon, the Allman Brothers Museum, not I don't think it was archived or digitized. I found it in this thing, and I lead off chapter 13 with it. Let me see if I can find the actual quote though, because I want to. This guy named M. Scripp of Quebec, Canada, wrote this letter. Please review this letter of complaint, and this was sent to the Allman Brothers, care of Atlantic Records, which was distributing Capricorn. Please review this letter of complaint. After spending a small fortune in hard-earned money, amassing a very fine record collection, I recently purchased your new live double LP album. After smoking up some excellent homegrown marijuana, one joint only, that then played your album. My complaint is this. After listening to your beautiful music, the rest of my records seem irrelevant. Thank you so much for a wonderful performance. Hope to see you live. Your dedicated fan, M. Script. I mean, okay, to me that sums it up. And that's that's my header quote for that chapter, because it is, it really does sum it up for me. So that was one of my, fun ones.
Do you think the whole people's band concept, do you think that continued through, the initial run to 76? Do you think it continued after that? Were they able to capture it again later after they reformed in 89?
Oh man, what a great question. How deep we want to go on this one, Jeff? Like, you want to give me a time limit? I've thought about this a lot. Okay,
2 minutes.
So I'm going to say
no. You got 3.
No, yeah. I'm going to say.
I was going to give you 5.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
3, and then Harvey gets 2 minutes on Goose.
Harvey, I got it. I promise. On that question, I think they rode that wave through that first breakup in 76, and probably because of what happened in 76, Cher, drug trial, money issues, a pretty lackluster album, and pretty poor ticket sales, it all just sort of petered out. And then from, when they get back together in 79, Macon's no longer their spiritual home. I do think when they left Macon, which was in that early middle, in that period before 76, when Macon was no longer like home base, that changes everything. Because even when they get together in 79, Florida's kind of home base, and they get together in 89, nobody has a home base. You kind of lose something there. So I do think, though, saying that, when they, in 79, when they got back together, I don't think really, this whole thing played People's Band, the Brotherhood, I'm sure, played up. Not as much, but it really was big after the 89 and the Dreams reunion. It was a big part of the Dreams reunion, like the box, like the what they said in the box set, and the promotion, the brotherhood of the band and all that. And I think that did come back. And I think for a very brief period of time, that magic sort of came back too, with Warren and Woody when they joined the band. And I think when that ensemble began to have the issues that always creep up with the Allman Brothers Band, at least in those eras, it ended that kind of for good. It's a myth thing now, right? It's just a founding ethos about, and I think it gets to the point, like, we're going to just give it all. We're just going to leave it all on the stage, including if, as in the case of Greg, the time to time, we got to, push you up there on a cart, to get you up there. I think that is, it means as much to say Band of Killers as anything else, right?
Where did they, as much as Harvey and I have talked about Panic is equal or greater, equal to, or perhaps probably a little less than as much as we've talked with the Allman Brothers and hypotheticals and counterfactuals and stuff. But one of the ones that is always, we've talked about and has always been in my brain, is sort of the band's, I'll say decision, but I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, decision that led them not to necessarily a place of success, mainstream acceptance, or anything that where their contemporaries like the Grateful Dead certainly followed trends in music at a time when rock and roll was losing steam. So and I know it's inevitable to compare the Dead and the Allman Brothers. And it's
fair.
And it's fair.
It goes Allman Brothers to the Dead, of course. The Dead are exemplars.
But what sort of, I'm going to use this word and I don't mean it in the right or wrong way, but where did the Allmans sort of miss it? Or where did they go wrong as compared to a band like the Dead, who stayed relevant and at the top for 30 years, whereas the Allmans had high peaks and the highest peaks and the lowest of valleys.
Well, and I'll add, it's not like the Dead had the most amazing management team or even the most cohesive band members, right? I mean, they all had their own issues. So anyway, I was just, my 2 pennies.
I wish, all right. You've packed a lot of questions into this particular one. Let me get to, I think the petering out in '76 really hurt the Allman Brothers Band, and the manner in which it happened, right? Like from a PR standpoint, musical, whatever else, right? A lot of things sort of just happened there. And I think what's, when they're in their downtime between '77 and '79, like the records that Greg put out, the records that Dickie put out aren't that, like, they are very much, to me, the definition of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, particularly with the projects of the surviving members. They're just so much better. Dickie's projects with the Allman Brothers Band are exponentially better. And all you have to do is listen to the second Great Southern record next to Enlightened Rogues in 1978-79. You can hear the difference. It's mainly the rhythm section. It's mainly the drummers, right? But there's something different. Okay, so the breakup, I think, killed them. It really hurt them, Jeff. And as a touring act, but they were huge in '79, '80, '81. They were still doing really big business as a touring act. The Allman Brothers were. Here's what's weird to me: them and the Dead are both on Arista at this point. Why did nobody put a little tour together of that? Right? I have a thought, and I think it's because there was a. The Dead thought Greg was a narc, and they were not going to play with him. It was a big missed opportunity because, again, the Allman Brothers peter out in '82. I mean, the Dead, dude. Let's talk about the big difference. The difference between Touch of Grey and I'm No Angel, right? Like, both of them were big MTV hits, but Touch of Grey was earlier. And the Dead were still like a very active touring entity, and I think you could look at it and say that's where it all kind of started to crumble for them too. That massive amount of popularity, where the Allman Brothers could stay in that little pocket of popularity that they had and never, get that again. I don't know, man. I've thought, I've obviously thought about that a lot. The Allman Brothers never had steady management. Walden did not keep good track of anything. Any records or anything, anything else. I give them more credit, the Allman Brothers, breaking up in '82 than I used to, saying, they were being forced to do something they didn't like and they didn't support. And, when they put out their record Brothers of the Road, that was just dreck to them. They're like, we're not doing this anymore. We'd rather break up and start over, so... 73.
Were you saying that Mike Lawler, did Mike Lawler have something on the band? Is that why he was forced?
Dude, this is really fast. Here's a fascinating one for you.
We should explain who Mike Lawler is.
I'm about to.
Pretend like some of us don't know.
I'm about to.
Okay, Bob's going to explain it.
Harvey, Mike Lawler was a producer. He who joined the band, but he's pretty famous for playing guitar on stage with the Allman Brothers multiple times. And I think even worse, if you watch any of the videos, he makes faces when he bends notes on the guitar that are really, it's just the worst.
Troubling.
Okay. And the music sounded very, dude, you listen to those records, man. That is some coked out music, man. They are flying. And quick story, Jeff, I talked to, I don't know who's another Allman historian, I can't remember which one, but about, I'd sent him my David Goldfleece. David Goldfleece was the bass player in this era, Harvey. I did an interview with him a couple months ago, about a year ago. And this guy said he had talked to Lawler, and Lawler felt really bad about his tenure in the band. Like, genuinely felt terrible about it. And this guy told him, I want to say it was Brennan, but he said, like, look, nobody blames you for what happened. Like, it's the Allman Brothers' fault for allowing guitar in the Allman Brothers band, not Mike Lawler's fault for suggesting it.
Yeah. I do think a academic look at how cool bands made it through the '80s is an interesting topic. The Who, the Grateful Dead, they all had their moments. But to get through that era, it took some effort, right? Because it was made to break you down, because it's just garbage, right? For the most part, the popular music in the '80s. So it's interesting to see how some of those bands got through that.
And you
phase.
then you get Emotional Rescue by the Stones. which is just this bizarre disco record that I love.
Yeah.
I still love,
Right.
No, I think there's a lot to be said for all of that, right? How rock and roll kind of grew up in that era. Remember, this is also later 80s is that Armani suit era for the, for Clapton, who were all of the guitarists who were David Gilmour, he was wearing the Armani suits. They would go out, that's not Dickie Betson. There are Dickie in '86 with a Floyd Rose tremolo on his gold top here in Nashville from Starwood. You've seen it, Jeff. That little reunion show. It just doesn't work.
No. Harvey and I, like with anybody that loves Widespread Panic, talks a lot and thinks a lot of Bruce Hampton. And so you kind of mentioned him, Bob, earlier. Talk a little bit about, if you can, sort of Bruce was a contemporary. The Hampton Goose Band was a contemporary of the Allman Brothers Band in 69, 70, 71. So talk about how kind of those bands or those personalities interacted a little bit.
I think from that early era, Duane Allman loved the Hampton Grease Band and loved Bruce Hampton. So, I think that's the biggest you can say. He loved them and got them signed to Columbia, and their record "Music to Eat," right? The "Music to Eat," which was, Bruce said, I heard this, and I don't, that he said he made it up. Third worst selling record. He typed one of the documentaries. He said he made it up, but either way, it's perfect. And got the A&R guy fired, who said like, "This is the greatest thing ever," blah blah blah. And Duane loved that band. And I've got a really great quote in the book from Bruce that says about seeing the Allman at Piedmont Park, and says the fire and the intensity was there. It was pure as hell. I think he also said no one was playing checkers, like they were just, and so, and Bruce Hampton, when I was coming up, look, I just need to say, like, I revere Bruce Hampton. I'm one of those who never has quite understood and, listen to him a lot, but everybody he influenced is like just so important to me. So I it's like, yes, I pay homage to this great genius of extraterrestrial
something
of Southern music,
Yeah.
And, but I don't think Bruce Hampton had a huge influence on the Allman Brothers Band until the aquarium, the Allman Rescue Unit.
Right. How many of those guys ended up in the Allman Brothers?
Starts with OTL in '97. In '99, Derek joins, who is an acolyte of Bruce Hampton's, and of course has his own, incredible lineage there. And then Jimmy comes along, Herring comes along, and that summer 2000, man, some of my favorite Allman Brothers music that I ever heard in my life. Like that to me, I was thinking about this actually going in this call today. I don't know if I heard another guitar tandem play so like lyrically together like that until that point. Like I'd heard, I'd have to really look through my memory banks about what shows I had seen through that year to know if there was anything that was just like Jimmy Herring and Derek Trucks speaking on guitar together. I was sad that Jimmy didn't join the Allman Brothers permanently, and I understand fully why he didn't, but it was so like beautiful and lyrical. So that's really where the Hampton influence. You remember, there's this famous quote from I think Alan Paul's first book where they just took it out, and Greg got all pissed off on the bus, and he comes on the bus, he goes, "Bruce Hampton's ruining my band," and he goes storming back to to his lounge in the back. And apparently Derek says he comes out a couple minutes later. He goes, Duane must have just read him the riot act, because he comes out and he goes, "My brother and I, we always had these issues. We always talked about, you just do what you want to. This issue is eternal for me," and it's, so like that, that relationship, and Bruce as kind of the, a raconteur, storyteller of this scene and this mythical figure also. Listen, I go to the Roots Rock Revival camp that Butch Trucks started with O'Teal and Luther and Cody Dickinson and a bunch of others. And O'Teal basically all he talks about is Bruce Hampton's magic. It's like everybody just sits there and you're like, whoa, like, wow, I feel kind of the same way when I'm around JMO. JMO's got a different magic to him. It's a similar, like, I don't think you're from this planet and I want to know more, you know? So, and you know, then you got Chuck played with, Chuck's on that live Aquarium Rescue Unit record, I believe. Or is that T. Lavitz that's on that record?
I don't know that T. Lavitz was in the Aquarium Rescue Unit, but
no,
maybe.
he was with you guys. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It is Chuck. I think Chuck is on the live Aquarium Rescue Unit record. So there's all these there's all these like connections.
Yeah.
And when I saw Panic the first time, that was '93 at Horde, and Aquarium Rescue Unit was on that
was
bill.
there. Yeah.
That was the first time. I think it might be one and only time they went right over my head, man. That shit was crazy.
The only thing that I can remember, I was at that was my first Panic show, was Horde '93, and I knew a lot of those bands. I did not know ARU. I mean, other than maybe just had heard their name before, and obviously the Colonel was very strange, right? All the songs were weird, but man, I remember clearly O'Teal, like resonated. Like, that dude is a badass, and I've never heard anybody make that sound with a bass guitar before. That was pretty awesome. And they always playing in the Dead, so like, you know, there you go. There's full circle.
Full circle for sure. His whole adult life, I've heard him say this before: Bruce Hampton, Allman Brothers, Grateful Dead. Those have been his gigs. Yeah. Special cat, man, who can pull all that off too. Honestly,
no doubt.
Harvey, do you have any other questions?
No, I'm just here for the ride. This has been so awesome.
Well, you started off hot. So
well,
I thought that didn't.
Hey, he's just dishing now. He's just moving the ball, keeping the clock moving.
That's right. So you made a statement earlier that I don't necessarily disagree with, but I think you sort of you compared going and playing the Fillmore East, you know, and showing up and doing what they did, and you drew a correlation to Coltrane showing up and doing a Love Supreme with Rudy Van Gelder, and you said, well, I'm not comparing the two or something like that. Well, compare the two. Look, I mean, I think I know what you're getting at, but yeah, don't bury your team, man.
No. I think what I'm trying to say though is, listen, look, yes. I mean, a Love Supreme is a special piece of music that has a whole different resonance. You know, in terms of showing up and playing, kicking ass, turning on the tapes and going, yes, you know, same thing. And on the Allman side, higher stakes, certainly. You're on that, you know. But I think what I was trying to explain, you know, the basically concept of was just simply, you know, it was. You know, it's not a live album like we conceive of a lot, you know, like I'm going to stitch a few things together. I may patch this or that. Like, it's like going into the studio and hitting record and doing it. You know, I just didn't want to take anything away from St. John. You know, like I have to be careful.
All right. I don't think we have a strong Coltrane contingent on the pod.
I mean, I might in my role.
That's true.
And in all honesty, like, that's a spiritual ass record. I actually meditate to At Fillmore East too. So that's, I can't, but I meditate to a Love Supreme. Like, that's just a special piece, but it's like Kind of Blue. It's the exact same thing, you know?
So one of the things you didn't mention when you were giving the breakdown of the Fillmore East sessions was the first two nights, the band made the decision to have horns.
Yes.
And then, of course, as you explained, and famously, Tom Dowd shows up, and, you know, the brothers are playing down at the Fillmore East, and he shows up, and they have horns. Like, what the hell? Why do you have horns? Get those fools off the stage, whatever. So, great counterfactual music history. What if Tom Dowd doesn't show up and get them to take the horns off the stage? Was the band going to do it anyway, or was Tom the reason why they did it?
Oh no! I mean, Tom, listen, you know, Juicy Carter continued to butcher Allman Brothers music for the next 6 months, man. You know, till Duane died.
Why did they? So okay, well, we should. So Juicy Carter played.
Let me get to your first question first, so before we get to, because
we should tell you who Juicy Carter is. Juicy Carter is a saxophone player that played with J-Mo in Otis's band and Percy Sledge's band.
As far as I know, I think it was just Percy Sledge's band, but maybe the bands that back Joe Tex and that whole, you know, it was. But I think Sledge's band was the main place he knew him. A tenor sax player. who
And
you
so
know
he
just
shows up and plays on the Fillmore East sessions, but then, as Bob said, shows up through the end of September 1971 and ruins some very fine versions of Allman Brothers songs we know and love.
yeah, he doesn't. Friday night early show, he sits in on Hot Lana, and on I think the horns had played Thursday night. They didn't record the Thursday night show, or it doesn't exist. I think the horns had played, and Dowd was like, no, and Duane was like, look, can we at least try it with the tenor guy? We really like him. We want to try it. So the first night, Friday night, also Bobby Caldwell from Johnny Winter's band, and Captain Beyond Timbali played percussion on Liz Reed, and Juicy played on Liz Reed. And man, he's out of tune. He doesn't feel, to me, he has no flow with the music at all. And there's a part of it, I'm gonna shout out Andy Van Noy. He's gonna see it and he's gonna love this, but where the band is pushing hard behind him, they're wailing. And if that just wasn't there, I could listen to it a lot, but he is just, ugh. And so Harvey, they and then he plays on You Don't Love Me, Jeff, which is one of the songs they're recording for sure for the album. They're not recording Liz Reed for the album yet. I don't think they went into it saying we're gonna put out 2 songs that we've already released that are gonna take up a side and a half of a record. But I think once they captured that brilliant version of Liz Reed and that brilliant version of Whipping Post, they're like, we have to put these out too, which was a great decision. So he plays the 2 songs the early show, and I think he only plays in Hot Lana he does only plays Hot Lana Friday night, the Friday late show, and then Saturday not at all. And what I put in the book, Jeff, I mean, if he doesn't do that, we don't have that note perfect Liz Reed that is just, I mean, it's this glorious piece of momentary composition. Just mournful, beautiful, evokes all kinds of things in your mind, and is just those 6 guys pushing and pulling. It's a gorgeous piece of music, and we wouldn't have that unless they decided they were going to go re-record it somewhere, right?
It's such an interesting decision, though, and again, this is things you think about, but it was such an interesting decision to build to that point the stakes that everybody in the band knew, and then let's get this guy who's never played with us before or rarely played with us before to sit in the most important shows of our life.
Yeah, and I mean, Tom Doucette gets a lot of solo time on that, right? This is the nominals. This harmonica player, harmonica player Tom Thom, Thom Doucette. But he was, kind of a nominal 7th member, never wanted to join the band. But he gets a lot of time too, right, on that record. So they were sharing a little stage time. But I agree, Jeff, like it doesn't make a lot of sense. And then you and I talked about this. You were the first one to put it this way. He goes, why not King Curtis and the Kingpin? Yeah. Why not the Memphis Horns? Like, Jesus, why would you get and this guy's, he's not really an R&B guy. He's not really a jazzer. It just doesn't work. And, there were 2 other guys playing the night before that it was even worse.
So so why is it an interpersonal relationship? Is it, I mean, is it, because back to the subject of this podcast, Widespread Panic often makes choices to sort of help their friends, right? They release their singles are Vic Chestnut covers and Bloodkin covers that maybe not necessarily the most, accessible tracks on their albums, but that's important to them, right? For whatever reason. And so is that, and for good, better or worse, often, right? Is that a similar thing that's happening here with Allmans? Are they making choices, maybe not their friends, but they're making choices with like people that they feel comfortable with or whatever?
I think on in this particular case, I think there's a little of that, and there's a whole lot of we just like playing. We just like to play, and whatever we do is going to work out, and it's going to be fun. We don't think that far ahead. Right. Honestly, and here's the
Occam's
deal.
razor, right? It's
in '68, I found a letter. Same time I found that letter about complaining about the quality. You've made my record collection irrelevant. This letter from JMO to Twigs Linden. Twigs Linden was Percy Sledge's road manager, Little Richard's road manager. Actually, no, yeah, he was, and then Percy Sledge's road manager. So JMO was in Sledge's band, And he and Twigs was from Macon, stayed in touch. Twigs became the first Allman Brothers tour manager. Also killed a Buffalo club owner in 1970 in a psychotic drug-infused rage, and was found not guilty by reason of insanity. But that's, I just have to say it. Let me move on, because Twigs, J-Mo writes this letter to Twigs, and he says to Twigs, apparently they talked about, Jeff, I think you knew this, after NATRA, was it the Miami convention?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Walden's like, I'm going to put my own rhythm section together, and I'm going to do the Muscle Shoals, you know, Memphis thing here at Redwall, you know. So he's going to put this band together, and J-Mo's the only one who shows up to be in the band. And but I guess Twigs had sent something to J-Mo wherever he was, and J-Mo wrote him back, and he said it's literally, I got it in here, but it says, "Dig, man, about that studio gig," and in J-Mo's handwriting, beautiful handwriting. And he goes, "I've also got this other guy for the band, and Juicy and Fats." So he's J-Mo, you know, like he likes this guy and wants him to be a part of it. So he's more than a friend to J-Mo and bandmate. You know, like he's aware of the guy's chops. J-Mo swears to God it would have worked. I think every time you listen to it after that point, it doesn't. But I think if you want to hear what like horns would sound like for them properly, I think you just listen to Tedeschi Trucks Band take on an Allman Brothers song or their own songs with the full band. I mean, I don't buy into that. I never have. Derek Trucks is the Duane Allman reincarnated, and I just always thought that was really unfair to Derek and everything else, right? But there's a lot of parallels and similarities, and one thing I think that Derek inherently understood from playing all those years in the Allman Brothers Band, Duane's vision was something really big. It wasn't just two drummers and two guitars, you know. I think Duane would have done, and there's a lot of, I found a lot of this too. There's a lot of talk that that's what Duane wanted, was a big ass, you know, band, horns, singers. He already loved the two drummers. It was one of my favorite things about Derek when he formed Tedeschi Trucks Band, was like two drummers. I'm like, yeah, I think two drummers is just awesome. I think it's the coolest thing ever, you know. So there's my take.
Well, I know we're running long, or running, you know, up on it. So I want to make sure we do our cultural recommendations, and Bob can.
You got better questions than that. You have another question for me, though.
Put over his record. No, I have two more questions for you.
So screw my cultural recommendation. I want my.
No, we'll get to it at the end. Harvey, do you have any questions, or I'll ask mine?
No, go. No,
okay, so this is a statement that I'm going to force you to discredit. You ready?
Yeah.
Jack Pearson is the second best guitar player that ever played in the Allman Brothers Band.
Jack Pearson is the best guitar player, technically the best guitar player that has ever played in the Allman Brothers Band.
Look at that. I set him up and he knocks it out of the park.
Did you guys have a call before this?
No.
No.
And I thought
Stockton
maybe I said second because I was like, I'm going to say third. It's like, no, I'm going to push him and see if he does it. Look at this. Look at this guy. All right, now I got to explain why.
You know, look, I'll give it to you. You know, first kind of explain it as a player. Jack Pearson. Okay, the way I say it, when I listen to Warren Haynes, I feel like that if I gave it all of the effort and everything else, there are things I could do that Warren does, like I can channel Dickie a little bit too, you know, even some Duane, you know, like not a lot. Like I'm not saying I'm a great guitar player, but I don't feel like they are absolutely untouchable. I feel like if I can practice, I can hit a couple notes that they do. You know, when I hear Derek Trucks, I just can't even fathom what he's doing because he plays an open E. He's got the slide going and the fingers and all the microtones, and he's simultaneously doing three strings at all times at different places sometimes, and that's hard. You know, I love it, and I would rather just listen to it. Jack Pearson makes me want to simultaneously practice and quit at the same time. I mean, and you know, I've seen him a number of times. I saw him a number of times with the Allman Brothers. The couple of years he was with them, I mean, it was phenomenal. His technique and his tone, his control of the guitar. I I think the best thing when he was in that band is it stopped. You know, Dickie and Warren had really started. They were like two heavyweight fighters, man. They'd go out there and just start punching. And you had Woody over there, like he was also thumping at Dickie too, you know. And when O'Teal comes in and, you know, Jack, it brought this whole like fresh sound. You know, there was a lot. There's always this talk whenever a new guy would join the band, like how he measures up to Duane, especially if he plays slide. And I mean, I don't think it was just J-Mo, but I know J-Mo said it, and I said the same thing. I said I think he took slide where Duane would have taken it. You know, Jack is just a brilliant, and he's technically, you know, like literally the man touches the guitar and it just sings. And if you need proof, his main axe is a $50 Squire. You know, like, and you know, seriously, all you guys, I don't know who's still watching live or anybody listens to this later, but cue up Eric Church at the Greg Allman tribute, Win, Lose, or Draw. Greg's song, which is the Allman Brothers recorded a pretty shitty version of. Greg sounds like he's got Coke dripping down the back of his throat. He's got the Coke nose or something. That's no shit. Listen to it again. I don't know why they put that version out. I seriously was like, are you serious? But Eric Church does it, and that's Jack Pearson on guitar behind him, and it is, I mean, and Chuck Leavell's on piano too. But the way, if you want to know why he's the best, or why I would say like technically the best, like that solo would probably define it. And there's millions of others. And that doesn't, like, I have he's not my favorite in that rank. Like, Duane is always at the top for me. Derek is always number 2 for me, and everybody else sort of flows in the middle. But he is he is the best guitarist that was ever in that band. Just a phenomenal talent.
Jeff, before you get to yeah, that was good. Before you get to your last one, Jeff, I'm going to ask this. I've been wanting to, and maybe it's not fair, and maybe, I don't know, but Desert Island version of the Allman Brothers that doesn't have Duane Allman in it, what version are you taking?
You saying like
to, you get one version of the band that doesn't include Duane Allman.
Oh,
what version is it? Who's in the band? I mean, it had to have existed, you know.
Yeah. No. Like, do I want the 5-man band era, the Chuck Lamar era, forever, the Warren Woody era? I mean, I probably would take the Derek Warren era at the end there. Yeah, because so I got on the bus in '93, like saw my first show, and that was, you know, the Warren and Woody era. Incidentally, Dickie had just come back from a bender from a rehab stint, and I didn't know anything about any of this. You know, you don't know back then, no internet, and that band was particularly good and particularly together, but they were very heavy and almost too heavy, you know. By the time Jack Pearson joined the band right after with O'Teal, there was a whole bunch of problems going on with the original members, and Dickie's playing, you know, did not keep up. And then Derek joined and it had its moments, but it wasn't that. I you know what? No. I take it back. I think it would be summer 2000 with Jimmy Herring. I could listen to, and I have listened to hours and hours and hours of them playing together. So I take it back. And if I could only listen to one, it'd be those people do that early catalog, because that's like listening to the real deal, I suppose.
Good answer. I like it.
I'd say 5-man band. That's just my personal.
Okay, so Jeff, that was my initial thought, and here's the reason why. The catalog is a little bit light, you know.
I mean, that's the only reason why.
Yeah. So,
but the playing is
because I can get high falls. I can get high falls in summer 2000 and Mountain Jam and Dreams and Jessica and, you know, everything, you know. But yes, 5-man band is like, if I could go back in time and like see like a non-Duane era, it probably, I don't know, you know.
Only because you didn't get to see it. That's why. You know what I mean?
You know, the thing about that band though. So Harvey, just a quick, you know, Duane dies and the band decides we're going to keep going, and it's pretty remarkable. They played at his funeral, man. They played a gig at his funeral, which I will play at any memorial we've had of our family, whatnot. I totally stole it because it does make you feel pretty good. And but they did, and then they go out as a quintet, and when you listen to the music, like, you hear the whole, you hear where Duane Allman is not, And yet it is still some of the finest music you have ever heard, some of the finest communication. And it just flows so well, but it is like you can feel their humanity. They're just pouring their pain out on stage, and it's magical. And I'm repping TY here, Jeff. I don't know if you see it. A little Anthology 2. Our buddy Tony Yokin, shout out. And Tony saw one of the shows. I interviewed him, and he, expresses. He was like, backstage, they did not want to be there, but then once they got on stage, it was like this. Music heals. I mean, we all live that, right?
Yeah.
We know that.
Well, you answered that so well and with so much emotion. So my last question is going to seem a bit trite, but I have to ask it. Why do you hate Cher so much, Bob?
Oh.
You know what's really funny, Jeff? You say that it's really funny. I actually have begun to sort of rethink that entire episode. In terms of saying. I think those were two people who really loved each other and just had a really hell of a time, Well, I mean, there was,
if you want to talk about cocaine dripping down somebody's throat. I mean,
well, listen, I mean, again, I've heard this tape. I might have sent it to you. It's Greg at this high school in Buffalo. He was there at rehab, and the kids at the rehab at the school like invited him to do this performance. And I want to say this is maybe 78, maybe. And he literally thanks her from the stage, and it's very, and this is a time he's off the stuff, he's sober and he's sort of thinking about it. So you look at it, it was a terrible sort of for Allman Brothers fans. Greg Allman represents the Midnight Rider, the authenticity of the People's Band and the Allman Brothers.
The man of the people, and he's on the cover of People magazine. And
he's married to one of the a person who's been a star for a decade at that point. And was one of the biggest stars in the world. And he was already struggling with fame to begin with. And then you add that on top of it, and the drugs, and then get messed into the Scooter Herring drug case. And so, but it used to be, why do I hate Cher so much? I don't, but it used to be back when in the 90s, in the late, 90s, early 2000s, you'd say something about the Allman Brothers, most people would go, wasn't he married to Cher? That was a real common thing. You'd be like, no, this is the greatest band in the history of the world, and Duane died in a motorcycle accident, and he buried in Rose Hill Cemetery, and play all night, and all this sort of stuff. So it's like, the joke being, like God damn it, this is more than this, this thing. And when I discovered the band, we were all arguing for their importance, like those of us who were super, super into this, but everybody understood in terms of the Dead's success, and that the Allman Brothers were never sort of going to be revered in that same category. So it became like a little bit of a stepbrother thing, and you blame Cher for that, right? Like Cher's
chip
fault.
On the old shoulder.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, great answers to those very important pressing questions, Bob. Well done.
Yeah, that was a pretty trite one. Good for you. Way to go, Jeffrey.
Way to finish strong.
Written down right here at the bottom.
Way to go, Jeffrey. Way to finish strong. Harvey, by the way, I'm repping the Mother Hips today for you.
Yeah. No,
Since when I first met you, you recognized the lid. I had to bring a little bit.
Very few people recognize that, but I saw them for the first time last spring. It was fun in DC.
I think you texted me. Yeah. Did you tell me you did that? Dude, man, I will tell you. I keep looking at their. I really want to go out to California, catch a couple shows, because I really do enjoy their music. I enjoy and they don't play East enough, but just a good band, man. Just a fun fucking band.
And we did our spring '95 draft last week, and talked about how the Mother Hips opened up, I think, a couple shows that tour, at least one in the spring '95 for Panic.
Oh, really? So I heard them on the '94 Horde tour. That's how I first heard them. They were on the side, on the at that point I think we called it the side stage, or something like that. But so I figured I'd rep them for you, since one of the few people east of the Mississippi who automatically notices them.
For sure. All right, you got a recommendation for us, Jeff?
Got two.
No,
Oh,
let Bob go.
No,
Bob,
well, no,
Bob's
Bob's.
champing,
Yeah,
champing
sorry.
at the bit.
Guest goes first. Sorry.
Okay.
Where are my
No, it's okay.
manners? My mother would be
It's okay.
appalled.
It's okay. So my first one, I'm going to shout out my dude Sean Gaylord. He's got a podcast called Why the Beatles Matter, and it's good stuff. He's talking to a lot of people. He's been a podcaster for a long time. I was on his podcast, I don't know, about a year ago, and we had a great conversation. He's a great Allman Brothers fan, but Why the Beatles Matter. He's exploring all kinds of cool stuff. And I'm gonna shout out this. Jeff, do you know this book? Have you seen it, read it yet? My Black Country by Alice.
I have not read it, but I know of it. So,
listen, I got it for Christmas. My daughter Tyler, thank you Tyler, bought this for me. She looked up. It's typically I'm like, don't buy me any more books. I'll buy my own books.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't put it down, man. It is. She takes a really good motif, which is her understanding of what what Black country music is, and sort of carries this throughout the book. Jeff, the Allman Brothers make an appearance. In fact, I need to reach out to her because Will the Circle Be Unbroken is there, but she didn't connect it to the Allman Brothers doing it. So I know her. I've served on a couple scholarly panels with her at the Museum of African American Music here in town. I mean, we're not friends, but I mean, we're familiar. Really, and I saw her open the first Isabel show at the Ryman this year. She opened with her My Black Country. It was a performance because she doesn't sing, but she's a songwriter, and so it's a great book. Really highly recommend. I like books like this that kind of write music from a slightly different perspective. Sometimes it goes over my head if people use a motif or a theory or theorem through, but hers didn't at all. It was riveted by the book. So
Nice.
hey, Harvey, why don't you go?
Well, I mean, I'm probably 2 months late on this, but I'm gonna share it because it's fresh, and we went on Saturday night to see a Complete Unknown, the Timothy Chalamet Bob Dylan biopic, which I knew that I would really enjoy, and it unbelievably exceeded my expectations. It is fantastic. I mean, I'm not, it's not going to change your life or anything, but man, it is an enjoyable 2.5 hours. I did not even look at my watch once, and I always do sitting in a movie theater. And I've now been sent down a spiral of Bob Dylan, just digging in all of the different angles. And so, yeah, that's my recommendation. If you haven't seen it, go see it. It's not really even playing that. We saw it at a little theater in Frankfurt, a little kind of art house place that is doing Oscar movies. So I'm sure it'll be on streaming pretty soon. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's awesome.
Agreed. It's a good movie. Yeah.
Read Elijah Wild's book about that it was based on too. Which
yeah,
right.
I added it to my
rabbit hole.
Added to my Hoopla library as soon as I got home. I'm gonna have to.
He's a good writer. He's another one who writes good books about.
I think that Timothy Chalamet guy might turn out okay. I mean, I feel like I got a good feel, kind of a Billy Strings feel for him. Like he may end up on that trajectory. I know he's got a funny name too, but he might turn out all right.
He's always one of those people where he thinks like, who's this little kid, and then like I turned the corner with him when he hosted Saturday Night Live the first time, and like he's hilarious.
Yeah.
He is
the ladies
fun.
like him too. Just like Colonel Bruce said, if the ladies show up and dance, the band's gonna last.
Yeah, there you go. He's got Kylie Jenner, so.
What about you, Jeff? What do you got?
Well, I thought I was going to have one, and then I watched the last episode of the series, and kind of lost me.
Wow.
Peter Berg has a new series on Netflix called American Prime Evil, which takes place in the Utah Territory in the late 1850s. So you have troops from the federal government, the Mormon militia, and then bands of various tribes of if Indians, the Shoshone are the main ones. And then through all of that, you have a mother and her son heading from east to west to go ostensibly find the boy's father in Crook Springs, Wyoming. And then the person that they end up going with is a guy named Isaac Reed, who's played by Taylor Kitsch, aka Tim Riggin. from Friday Night Lights, which Peter Berg, of course, made. Which of, you know, when, I mean, the other person that lives in my house loves her some Jim Briggins, like most ladies of a certain age do. And so when I told her he was in it, her interest was piqued. And then I showed her a picture of him looking all scrawny, and she was like, still looks hot. I was like, but there's a moment for the first time you see him where he legitimately, Taylor Kitsch clearly summons all of the tackling skills that he learned while on the Friday Night Lights, that then he like tackles this guy. It's perfect form. The first 5 episodes were good. The last one really, it was obvious how it ended, and kind of left me with a little bit of a bitter taste. But it's there. Obviously, it's historical fiction. But the stuff about the Mormon militias and the Nauvoo tribe and like all that stuff that went on out in the 1850s is super interesting. So I'll give it a half recommendation.
Okay.
But the full recommendation is one of the things that sustains me in this world is playing Connections on New York Times every day. And the reason why is because the way I have it set up, I don't have I do it the old-timey way where I scroll down to get to the little icon in my New York Times app feed. And it's like, it's so enjoyable to scroll past garbage, Connections. And it just is sort of like the thing you can punch in this 6:15 in the morning and start your day off. And, you know, you develop a streak. I'm on a 13-day streak right now. I'm pretty proud of myself for that. So I'm going to say Connections.
That's good. I've been doing crosswords in the Apple News app. And so what I do is I open the Apple News app, and as quickly as I can get to the puzzles button without seeing any headlines, I click it, and then I'm in puzzles, and then I'm doing my crossword, and I'm fine.
That's good too. That's a good way to do it too.
I've been on a genuine news fast since November 6th. Like legit, like not following it because I'm like, I know how I feel about this, and nothing's going to rage bait me and make me feel more upset. That's just using energy I don't have. Yeah. So I don't even. I'm barely on all my social media is gads of Allman Brother quotes about the significance of this band, and I'm a plug. I didn't even do a plug. You guys gonna?
No, well, I was just gonna say you need to plug away. Plug everything you got.
At Long Live the ABB everywhere, all your social media channels, with the exception of X. I left that a year plus ago actually, but all the other ones I'm on and regularly producing content. I hope that I'll get this, and I'll, if I can have the download, I'll put it up on my channel too. So at Long Live the ABB social media, and then longlivetheabb.com is where I do a lot of long form writing, and this kind of stuff is where my kind of, I call it conversation from the crossroads of Southern music history and culture. Panic has made one of my posts I call Picking Up the Pieces because I was a little pastiche post, like was running out of ways to say odds and saws and potpourri and a quick one while he's away and all these things. So I called it Picking Up the Pieces, and brought to you by Johnny Sandlin's produced Widespread Panic. But that's where I do a lot of long form thought on really the wider discussions of how music history and culture interact, and tell us who we are and what we have been or what we aspire to be, what people aspire to be, etc. All through that guise and lens of the Allman Brothers as a cultural force. I mean, we could do it with anything, but I just choose to do it with a band that I love. And so I've got writing. And then listen, here's the thing: just go to freaking Amazon, Play All Night. I swear to God, if you would just click on it, any cool person, you click on it one time, that means more than even if you don't buy it. By clicking on it, it tells other cool people, hey, look, here's this book that this guy wrote. And it's a couple of years old now. The book isn't, that's not my moneymaker. It's just, I want people to read it, of course, right? Like, that's the goal. So at Long Live the ABB, I will be live streaming the Steel and Peaches 4th bandiversary party. I will be the Psychedelic Sherpa on Saturday, this coming Saturday, the 15th. That's their term, not mine. But on my channels, at Long Live the ABB on YouTube and Facebook, I'll be live streaming that. And that should be a lot of fun. Those guys are good cats carrying on the thing. And then I'll be in Macon on the 28th to see the Dickie Betts tribute show. And Lord willing, I will be in Madison Square Garden a few weeks later for the massive
Brothers.
show that's happening.
Tickets go on sale Thursday?
Wednesday at 10, Wednesday at
Wednesday.
9 my time for the pre-sale that I'm responsible for, that I'm scared to death to fuck up.
A lot of pressure, man. There's always just like
I can't take it, man. Every time I think about it, I piss myself. I piss my pants a little bit. I clench. I don't really pee. I sound really good, but I do clench a little bit. It scares me.
And you have merch for sale now too?
Yeah, dude. Merch.longlivetheabb.com. And I've got an Etsy shop now too. I've got a very super cool two cool things. I got Jimmy Carter in an Allman Brothers shirt. That famous photo.
Love it.
I took it. I upscaled it. And I took my little Long Live the ABB logo and I tagged it on the barn behind him. You got to look for it a little closely. But I got that as a T-shirt for sale. And then Psychedelic Peter Nogus, who is an artist out of Macon, did a really cool poster of the Dickie Show, and he's put some on some shirts for him. So that's up on Etsy as well. So that's just for funsies, just shits and giggles, stickers and swag and stuff like that. It's funny. I got my own swag. It started with picks, guitar picks.
Mm-hmm.
I think, Jeff, I've given you a couple. Now that you got Junior, is he playing guitar?
No, my children don't do any such things.
I thought somebody was playing an instrument.
I mean, it was attempted, but like with anything, the interest dwindled. So who knows? Maybe it'll come back. I think Ellison just finished his basketball season. He tried to quit during the mid third quarter of the last game. It was just a struggle to get him back out. It was like Scottie Pippen not wanting to go in the 90, and then was it the 95 finals or whatever, not wanting to take the last shot. But yeah. Well, thank you, Bob. This has been great. I'm glad we could finally get it done. You're the Allman Brothers, obviously the Dickie stuff at the end of the month in Macon, $1,200 tickets still available on Vivid, it looks like. And then obviously the brothers announcing that they'll be doing some shows in MSG April, which should be exciting. And then the Widespread Panic Band comes back in just a few days.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm wondering if those Madison Square Garden tickets are going to drive some of those Macon prices down just a hair.
Yeah.
I spent more money than I would have ever before spent. A friend was buying them. He look, I got the 4 VIP. He's like $400 a piece, and I was like, you know what? Just do it. I can't believe I did it. I still can't believe I did it, and I'm so
look
thankful.
Like the smartest guy in town.
Yeah, I'm really thankful I did it.
Uh-huh.
And by the way, we're getting probably $500 worth of swag with it, as I understand it, like posters and signs,
awesome.
shit, and blah blah blah. So it's like, that just happened. For once, your boy wins one in that regard. I feel good about it.
Well, it's gonna be amazing when they play From the Madness of the West and 3-card Louisiana Lou, 3-card Monty John. I mean, I really think they're gonna mine some of Dickie's finest compositions just for you.
Sweet Mama.
Hey!
He does a good job with
Joe
Sweet
Shaver
Mama.
wrote that song.
You are correct. Well, I know, but he does a good job with that song too. I was trying to come up with one of the real tough ones on the Great Southern records, and I just went blank as I was saying something. I just came out with the record beforehand.
I mean, we could have a whole other 2-hour conversation about Forrest Richard Betts, but another time.
That sounds like another episode.
Hey, listen, I'm thankful, and I should give a shout out also to your boys, Widespread Panic, for at that same Greg tribute show, doing Just Ain't Easy from the Enlightened Rogues album. I want to say deep cut. I was really moved when they did that. I thought they really played a good version of it, and of course, Wasted Words was pretty choice too. Like again, those are great Allman Brother cuts that kind of fit the Widespread Panic vibe very well. Just Ain't Easy was such a great surprise to me. Like, who's doing that? Nobody's covering that song. Nobody's covering that song. You know who has not ever covered this? Please Call Home has like 2 covers. One of them is Sam Moore, and I forget the other one. Please Call Home is which is on Idlewild South Harvey. I'm babbling. Is a great song. And I don't understand like how bad Walden was as a publisher to not get that in the hands of Nashville in 70 or even 75, 76. Like a lot of Greg's ballads, I think, and I think George Jones could have done wonders with, you know, like just with the right singer and the right producer, and it just never happened. And it that sucks, you know.
Conway Twitty, maybe.
I mean, all those guys, I think they could have really done some great songs with great versions with those, you know. Good producer could have really done something well. Something I learned from the recommendation of Jeff's, Tyler May and Co. Cocaine and Rhinestones podcast.
Well, this has been the Midwestern goodbye.
Yeah.
End to our episode where we tried to end.
Oh, okay. Now we're gonna wrap it up there.
I slapped my thighs twice, guys. It's time to go.
Bob Beatty, our good friend from Long Live the ABB. Thanks so much for taking your time, and go buy the book, or at least click on it, please. It's awesome. We'll be back next week, hopefully, and with more,
hot more Atlantic City takes.
Yeah, more great content here.
And Goose, of course.
On the Blue Estate, right. We'll see y'all.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Good job, fellas.
Thank you. It was awesome.